I want to tell you about 5 mistakes to avoid when you're moving out of state to Southern Missouri, and I really wish I would have had someone warn me about all of these things before we made our move. Moving to Southern Missouri is the best thing I've ever done for my family. The first mistake I want you to avoid is picking a criminal moving company. If you stick around to the end of this video, I'm going to share with you a really hard story. Our moving story, I think we hired maybe the cartel to pretty much attempt to steal our stuff. And luckily we had like this rabid lawyer who tracked them down and freaked them out. And we ended up getting all of our stuff, but it was a real nightmare of a story. And I also want to share with you why I really like the sheriff's departments around here. They super had our back, and we were, fresh from California. They could have just ignored us, and they really supported us through a very hard time. So stick around to the end and I'll tell you a terrible story. So a few pointers about picking your moving companies or strategies. I mean, there's all sorts of creative ways to move now. The first thing I want to say is don't try to save money. That was the mindset that we went in. We were looking at the most affordable option, and you really get what you pay for with moving, and it's already such a stressful time. So what I tell people is that if their possessions aren't treasured, really try to sell as much of your personal possessions before you move across the country or halfway across the country. If you add it up, easily you can spend $10,000 moving, and you can buy a lot of furniture for $10,000 too. So figure out, what you can sell. And then also if you're selling all your stuff, you still can get pretty good prices selling on Facebook. So I would recommend selling as much as you can, that you can, part with, and then put all that money into, your moving costs. So the other thing is that try to, if you're going to work with a company, work with a very huge, reputable company. Unless you can verify a small company, reviews are huge. Reviews really are huge, but reviews too can be faked, So just be very wary of small companies. And if you can, keep ownership of your possessions throughout the move. And even if that means, having to rent the U-Haul, drive the U-Haul yourself, and then tow a vehicle. I get it. It gets complicated, which is why we chose to hire a moving company that was going to move it all for us. But, ultimately they were trying to steal all of our stuff. So we were going to pay them, $7,000 to steal all of our stuff. So that's not a good deal. So try to find a better deal than that, okay? The next mistake that I want you to avoid is working with a realtor that doesn't holistically look at your life and all the components that you need to have synthesize and work together and fit. Because if you don't do that, you might end up in an area that doesn't work, maybe for employment, or maybe you want to resale your property and you pick a property that's in a really hard, slow market, like incredibly rural or just, declining population, something like that. And so I think that that's really important. And I do want to toot my own horn. I believe it's something that I'm very talented at because I really look holistically at my clients' lives and I make sure that all of the components line up and mesh. So I can give you so many different examples of this, but a lot of clients are coming out and they've got, the heart for homesteading and freedom and, low government restrictions. These are things that they're so excited about. And they think that they have to live really, really remotely to be able to do that. Another thing that I see really kind of destroy people's success here is thinking that they want to live in a completely secluded area. So I just want to speak quickly on these things, and that may work for some people, but I'm going to be honest, it's a very small margin of people that, incredibly remote and incredibly secluded works for their entire life. So in terms of the remote aspect, we had some friends and clients, dear friends now, that really wanted to, focus on homesteading, and they felt like they needed to live like 2 hours from a town. And luckily, they listened to us. And another good thing was that we actually got them to move here and live short-term in a rental out in a town, actually out of a town, but very remotely. I would say they were 2.5 hours from Springfield, way deep in Oregon County, and they got to live that way for several months before their purchase, and they did not like it. And so I really steered them towards Seymour because I knew that it was perfect for their life. They had, I felt like their eldest daughter, needed some, like a little bit of urban interface. She's about to go to college, and being completely shut off from like civilization isn't necessarily good for like, older kids or young adults. And then also they're foodies. I knew that they like to go on dates. I mean, there's a date night in Oregon County is like, is not happening. I mean, of course, like you can just make great food and all of that. But like, if you really like, their life was accustomed, they moved from Las Vegas and they were accustomed to like these great nights out. And, it's good to live the country life, but then if you're accustomed to that and you really enjoy that, be able to go to Springfield and like get home before midnight, you know what I mean? So, and that all worked out, and they're so happy where they're at. And I don't even know if they realized how hard I steered them, because I really saw what was going to work for their life. And I was thinking about the wife, the husband, and all 3 kids, and all of their needs, and meshing them and bringing them all together. So another aspect I want to talk about is being secluded. So many of my clients want that. And you guys, I don't want you to get mad, because I'm speaking from a place of like real, okay? And sometimes real isn't always the easiest to hear, but I want everyone to succeed out here. I want homesteading to prosper, right? I want your lives to prosper when you come out here. Being incredibly secluded and also being green, whether you're homesteading or farming, ranching in any parts of agriculture, is a terrible combo. Just even from the mindset of like, who's going to fix your well? Who do you know? Like if you live way out, who do you know that's going to come and do repairs? Maybe you're going to need help with fencing and all these things. And to a certain degree, like there's going to be someone living somewhere around that probably will help you out. But if you're really secluded, it's very hard to meet people, period. So one, when you're really secluded, it's hard to build community with people. And I feel like some people who have done that have had a harder time integrating into the amazing communities and the amazing fellowship communities that are so, to me, apparent and abundant in Southern Missouri. But if you stay too secluded, you really shut yourself off. Now, if you are seasoned, or you're just at that phase of your life where like your life can be self-contained and you don't need great neighbors, like you want to just be so remote that like you're not going to see your neighbors. Like if you're driving, 20 acres into your house, like on a private road, like you're not going to interact with your neighbors. You're just not, okay? But the other thing that I see people do is they're very green and they need to learn from their neighbors. We jokingly, but really not jokingly, say that we don't shop for properties, we shop for neighbors. And it is a joke, but there's a lot of truth in it. And we love our neighbors. Our neighbors have helped us so much at both properties that we've owned here in Southern Missouri. Yeah, so we try to tell people this and strongly discourage people, especially if they're green, to homesteading and agriculture, to living some super secluded, super remote life. We don't actually think that it leads to the happiest best life. The third mistake that I want you to avoid is not knowing your location in conjunction with the location of your employment, or all of the different kind of factors that play into your work. Like, are you going to be straight working from home? Is there going to be adequate internet there? Are you going to be commuting? What does that look like for your family? And then also all of the other things like that fall into your family, education. Are you going to be homeschooling? Are you looking for a private Christian school? All of those things. So it's similar to my second point, but different in terms of the second point is really focused on like the quality and the use of your land. And my third mistake is not looking at all of the needs that you have around employment. Now, I made this mistake because I didn't realize I actually somehow, you're new, you're looking at maps, I thought that it was going to be like a 30-minute commute. And for me, it was more like, I think it was over an hour. Yeah, I think it was like an hour. Like if you counted the dirt road, maybe like an hour and 15, and it got really, really hard. It's not ultimately why I decided to leave public school teaching English, but that's a whole other story, but it definitely made it a even harder grind, It was the beginning of me getting up at 5 a.m. though. My whole life I've got up at 6. And I had to get up at 5. And my daughter and I were running and walking the dogs. And it was just like, it was brutal to start. But in hindsight, I'm actually thankful for it. And God works in mysterious ways, because getting up at 5 is like a big part of our family kind of mission. And like, we want to be go-getters and just get after it, get after it when it's dark. And we got our 13-year-old getting up in the dark now, and she's loving it. Mostly. There's a few moments where she's like, But yeah, she's out walking the dogs, probably about 5:15 in the morning, and 13 years old, and it's actually a really good skill set to learn. So ironically, it was a good thing. But at the beginning and during the commute, I questioned whether or not that was a good thing. And it's something that I see a lot, is people kind of not factoring in employment, like being, I'll just commute, no big deal. Commutes will wear you down, eventually. They really, really do. It's after like a year of it, yeah, it's tough. And then the other thing, as I mentioned, people who need to work from home and not fully like understanding that they have to have a certain quality of internet. And I see a lot of people get misguided in that way too, where people are like, oh, the internet's fine. And they really don't know, like, but can you Zoom? If you're daily Zooming, like, you need to have that capability with your internet. And yeah, like if they're trying to sell you a place that has HughesNet, like it's not going to happen. Not consistently anyway. So yeah, my third mistake to avoid is really understanding everything that you need to be, profitable in Southern Missouri, and making sure that your move lines up with that. The fourth mistake that we made, that I don't want you to make, is buying your property sight unseen. It is what we did, and we still would have bought our property, but we could have at least prepared better emotionally for what we were about to purchase. And so I really truly wish that we would have planned a trip out as soon as we found the property, even though our life was so difficult. I was finishing up a master's program. We had a young baby. We were both, working, busy, so hard, But actually, there's a lot of realtors right now that don't even want to wrap up a property with a sight unseen waiver, because it often goes so bad. Because people come out and they actually don't even care. They don't care if they lose their earnest money. They don't want the property, and it means the seller got tied up, and it can just be really disastrous. I know more stories of sight unseen waivers and, those stories going bad than them actually being successful in making it to closing. So now, saying all that, it is what we did. But just quick story, I have an investor mindset. I always have. It's one thing that we're going to really branch out with. I work with a lot of investors. We work a lot in commercial. I love crunching numbers. I can see a project from start to finish. I can see it. I can feel it. I can crunch the numbers. So when I found our property that we purchased, I saw that it was 2 separate parcels. And my words exactly were, that property has $50,000 of equity right now. And when we had our realtor go look at it, he said, that property has $50,000 of equity, and if you guys don't buy it, I'm going to. So I already knew that as an investment, it was a sound purchase. But as a home that we were going to live in, it was a nightmare. So ultimately, that property was a live-in flip. That's pretty much what we did. We sold it in 10 months. We fixed it up. We turned a profit. And yes, we had to pay a higher tax rate because it wasn't 2 years, but we needed to get out of that house. And we love the house that we're in now. So saying all that, I just want people to be aware that if they're wanting to purchase a property that's their forever home and isn't some crazy real estate investment deal, that they really should see the property, if at all humanly possible. And or if you're like us, you just have to reimagine the whole property. We thought we were buying a forever home, we were going to fix it up, and we really decided to pivot. So if you're a fluid real estate investor type person, then if you crunch the numbers from afar, it can still be a good purchase. So saying all that, I just think that those are really crucial things to consider and mistakes to potentially avoid. The last mistake I want to talk about actually isn't something that we did personally, but it's something that I see a lot. And it's getting stuck in all of the very detailed specifics of your buy boxes of what you're looking for and not being willing to compromise on anything. Often the clients that I have that are like that are shopping still after 1.5 years of shopping. I could give you so many stories, brutal stories. One family sticks in my mind that are still shopping. They're living in a motel now, and the father's had a stroke. He's really on his last legs. It would be so nice to see him in the last epoch of his life to be in a home. But I see this a lot, and I see it to the detriment of people's lives, is that you get so stuck, whatever it is, I want an acre lake, or, it's gotta be live water. I need a year-round creek, and we might find them a place that has the acre pond, but not the year-round creek. It's got a wet weather creek and an acre pond, and it's perfect for their life in every other way. And they love the home, and they love the land, and it lays flat. It's already got a garden and a greenhouse, which is what they wanted, a great chicken coop, or whatever all the things are. And people aren't willing to let go or compromise of some of the buy boxes. And so far, what I've seen it really destroy people's lives. So I just think that that's something important to consider, that if you are really looking at holistically how to make your life the best life, right? At least that phase of your life, have that property lead to it being the best phase of your life, which is so many different components. And sometimes I think what happens is, and we all are guilty of doing this, is that we get an emotional picture of what that is, and we've used a lot of daydreaming and imagination, and we get so tied and almost addicted to the images that we've created in our minds of what that looks like, that we can't see that the perfect life was right there, and we didn't jump on it, and someone else did. And then that happens over and over and over again, where I've seen people let amazing properties with so much equity, they could, because I have that investor mindset. Here's what they could have done. They could have purchased the property that was seriously $150,000 lower than what it would have appraised for. There was that much equity in a property. I am thinking of a specific story right now. and letting that slip through their hands because the ponds weren't big enough or the ponds weren't spring fed. You know, we love spring fed ponds, but getting stuck to that can really let a good life slip through. And if they would have just purchased that property and moved here and stabilized their children and their family, just stabilized, they could have, by the time they were ready to sell it in a year or less, at that point, I believe that they could have made $200,000. Now, yes, there would have been capital gains taxes on that, but if they fixed up the property, you can deduct that from what is taxable, and you can, you know, make sure that you're paying all your workers a really high wage. So yeah, and that's where I do have that investor mindset where it's like, get in, get living. You know what I mean? Don't suffer. Don't suffer waiting for all of these specific buy boxes that here's what's something to consider. You might never find it. And so what I would propose is like find something that's amazing where your life is going to flourish and there's a crazy amount of equity. So many stories I can think of, you guys, that I watch people let properties slip through their fingers that had an insane amount of equity, and now they're waiting, and they've been shopping and living in Airbnbs and living in motels. So I don't have all these numbers crunched, but I want you to think about this, okay? They waited and they lost the good interest rates. They waited and they lost properties that had 6 digits to double, you know, multiple 6 digits worth of equity. And they're paying how much in Airbnbs and motels for like a year or 2 years. If you crunch these numbers, they're obscene. And then if you dig into it and you find out how miserable their life has been and how thin all their relationships are because it's been so much of a struggle, I just don't understand that. And I think that one thing that people do is they get tied to this, that you see this more in residential than you do in commercial. And I want to kind of help retrain, you know, residential buyers and sellers, that if they kind of get a little bit of this, you know, pull back from the emotion a little bit, start to crunch the numbers, start to just kind of look at it from like, you know, more of a like functional mindset of what just makes sense. Because, you know, I will do a video on it, but waiting to purchase property really truly doesn't make you money. Okay, so I just sorry, I've always have so many stories to tell. I've got another friend and she's waiting for the market to crash, and you know what she's done? She has lost so many properties that are $50,000 to $100,000 more now. That's the truth. And ironically, we might see interest rates in 2024 get down into the 5s again. That's actually what we got on this property. I think we're at like 5.5 or 5 3/4, and our mortgage isn't bad. So like often people are fretting over a quarter interest point, and it's like $20. It's like $20 a month. Like, I know that's a lot over the long haul, but I watch it stop people. And I watch people use those excuses to create a really unhappy life for them and their family. And I just think that over the long haul, waiting to purchase real estate is going to always pretty much lose you money, because equity in real estate, if you buy right, is going to out-trump. It's going to surpass interest rates always. That's where the big bucks are, is buying right and equity. So yeah, those are things to consider. And I really hope that people can, you know, hear what I'm saying, and I'm not trying to be attacking at all. I truly, from my heart, care so deeply for people. I really want people to not suffer and not go through these like brutal transitions. Moving out of state can actually, I believe, be much smoother. Thank you for staying to the end. As always, I super appreciate it. If you got something from this video, I also really appreciate all the likes and subscriptions. It truly does help the channel to grow and reach more people and help more people in their pursuit of living in the Ozarks. As I promised, I want to share really traumatic story of using movers from California that we're pretty sure were cartel. So that is why it's really important to vet any moving company that you hire. So we did exactly what you shouldn't do, which is hire the moving company that is the most affordable. And we literally called several moving companies and got quotes, and we went with the cheapest one. Now, little did we know, like, they didn't even have a legit number, like Department of Transportation number. That would have been something that we could have checked out. Never would have even thought of that. Never would have even thought that a company would do that. Yeah, they didn't have reviews or anything that could be verified. All of these things would have been good to look at, but we didn't. And so we gave them, I can't remember what it was. I think we gave them like somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000, and there was supposed to be like a little bit more money that we paid them. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but like at delivery, we were also supposed to pay money as well. So yeah, somewhere halfway along our way, they told us that they were not going to bring our stuff when they said they were, which it was supposed to be like, I think 2 days or something. We were going to stay in a motel, and 2 days after we arrived, it was supposed to get there. And that just kind of started to reveal itself, where we were realizing that we were working with like criminals. It all got really heated really quick. Luckily in California, my husband was working with some restaurateurs, and we were able to use, their lawyer, and she actually was able to track down like the company, the owners, I guess, like where they actually lived. She found the private storage unit where all of our stuff was being kept, which was illegal, and just so many other things. She was, like I said, she was like a shark. And what was frustrating is in California that people don't care about criminality. That's truly how we felt, down to the point where we called the owner of the storage unit. So legally, you're not allowed to keep like business, anything related to business, you're not allowed to keep in a private like storage unit. It's for personal use. Okay, so that in itself is illegal. So when we talked to the owner of the storage unit, she said she couldn't do anything unless we had the police come. And this was in San Jose, and we called the police, and we were able to give the police at least their phone numbers. They're like, okay, we'll call them. That's the best that they were going to do. They wouldn't go to the storage unit, because if they would have gone to the storage unit, the owner would have opened it and released our stuff to the police, and then we could have arranged to have like a real mover get our stuff from the police. That's what we wanted to have happen, but no, that's not what the police wanted to have happen. So we were at least a little bit hopeful at this point, because we'd talked to police. They called us back and said that the owners of the moving company said that we had said racist remarks, and the police were very threatening to us. I'm not even joking. Like, that's how crazy it was. And what I had said to the company is that it felt like we were working with cartel. Like, this felt criminal. And that was enough. Saying that was enough in California to have the police actually acting like we were the criminals and being threatening to us, and then very gleefully being like, we're not going to help you. We were blown away. We were shocked. So how ultimately we ended up getting our stuff that was all damaged was that the lawyer was able to find out where they lived and put some pressure on them with that knowledge. Like, kind of like, we could at least sue you civilly, and we know that you own these homes. So kind of all of a sudden we got our stuff back, but we were living for I think it was well over a month that we lived. We didn't think we were ever going to get our stuff back. Just super brutal. And all of a sudden they showed up. And luckily my husband speaks fluent Spanish. I mean, he's bilingual, but the driver spoke no English, like not a single word of English, and wanted $5,000 more to be able to get our stuff, and was trying to kind of blackmail us which was more than was ever quoted to us, to pay $5,000 more at that point. And so we called Douglas County Sheriff. The sheriff came out. They made the man stand back, and they said, these people are going to get their things, and just stayed there, like hand on his holster, and just let us for hours and hours and hours unload a huge truck, and just stayed there patiently. And I was not in my best self. I'm going to be honest. It's good that everyone was there. I was so mad. I was so mad. And all of our stuff was like ruined. I had a piece of furniture, the only piece of furniture that really matters to me. It was my great-great-grandmother's, and it's been handed down to me. And I had it completely refinished, like so lovingly refinished, where you had to hand carve different ornate parts of the wood and then match the stain to make it look like it was hundreds of years old. And oh my goodness. And it was all ripped up and scratched, and those pieces of, the new remade trim were broken down, and our appliances were dented. Our, several $1,000s worth of mattresses were molded. And I mean, actually, some of them were organic latex. So that mattress alone was like a $3,000 mattress, a brand new king mattress, all like tacoed and molded. And then in the truck, there was another layer of like someone's stuff and all of their stuff. They said they had made all their final stops, but they had kept some stuff, and it all had price tags on it. So I truly think that they just steal people's stuff. It really does seem like it's just theft, and no authority in California cares. So man, if you're moving not just from out of state, but if you're moving from a real like criminal stronghold, it is just crucial that you hire a reputable moving company, because the truth is, if you added up all the damage of our stuff, like we paid so much more than the highest quote. Let's just put it that way. So much more. So whether you need to move now or in the future, I would love to help you make that transition as smooth as possible. It doesn't have to be a nightmare, I promise. As always, all of my information is in the description below, and reach out to me even if you just have questions. I would love to help you answer them and make sure that this next journey of your life is a good one.